Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.
A very good evening everyone, and a very warm welcome back of course to Evolution Sim Racing here tonight for the second of 10 rounds here in our GT3 Season 8 Championship ahead of our first 1 hour race session of the season around this technically challenging Portimão circuit. So following on from last week, we got a taste of how the championship might stack up. We saw a dramatic end to the first race with a change for the lead right out of the final corner as we crossed the line, and then a cracking reverse grid sprint, which saw a series debut race victory for Mr. William Humphries, something that he's very familiar in doing in that GT4 division. But tonight we're back to do it all over again and follow all the live action here in Split A. But don't forget, we also have the wonderful Mr. Paul Walsh covering our Split B drivers, so be sure to check out that race once you're done with us here. So, for the eagle-eyed amongst you, you might have spotted that tonight, as always, I, Joseph Glass, am your guide in the commentary box. However, tonight I'm joined by a man whose reputation might precede him, actually. Not for his driving skills, of course. I mean, those could be described as forgettable. But for his top-tier professional waffle on the mic. So, we're all so very used to him. I hope you all join me in welcoming back Mr. Chaz Draycott to the booth. Chaz, it's not only fantastic to have you alongside me for the very first time, but it's also brilliant to have you back with us on trackside at Evolution Sim Racing, and I'm sure you're as ready as I am to get stuck into the action tonight.
Well, and in what conditions as well. Portimão is an amazing racetrack, very difficult in these cars and even more difficult in conditions like this. I'm buzzing to be back here. Great to be alongside you at long last in a commentary box, and I'm looking forward to seeing what mischief we can get up to tonight with my, as you called it, waffle.
Well, yeah, mate, let's have it right. We all waffle a little bit, don't we? When things go peak tongue, we just say what comes to mind. But absolutely, mate. I've been doing this nearly a year. You've been alongside us a lot longer than that, and it's Well, it's a shame that we haven't done it sooner. And I think it doesn't... I couldn't think of a more tricky combination for us to have to deal with. And we've had a few little blips before the start of the broadcast, as you might expect. At a circuit like Portimão, it's demanding enough as it is. Then we've gone and added wet weather to the mix, which is not only difficult for us, but equally as difficult for our drivers. We do just have a few moments to go in the rest of this practice session before we get underway for our qualifying session. So before that, we'll do a quick run through of the formalities, and then we'll follow on with some drivers and see how they are getting on around the circuit. So, as always, we have the 4 sponsors to cover. So first, Kame, of course, the trophy sponsor. We all know them very well by now, offering all of those trophies to all of our drivers who finish inside the top 3 in the respective classes, and of course the drivers that finish in the team standings as well. So over 30 trophies on offer for the guys in both of our series divisions. The GP2 group are back once again for another season, of course, so big thanks to Hussein Saragadazla for his sponsorship of the championship as always. And then, as we saw just there in the intro, we've got VRS and Trophy AI joining us this season and hopefully beyond. So of course, lots on offer in a sim racing space between the pair of them. A very interesting AI tool which will help you improve on the fly. And then of course VRS, we're all familiar with their hot laps, the setups, even some hardware that they have on sale now. So check those guys out online and keep an eye out on the server in due course to see how you can get involved with both of those companies. So, Chaz, we have no standings to run through yet, sadly. So we will just cut back over to trackside, and we will, we'll start getting on with things and see how the drivers stack up at the start of this session. Any predictions about who might be at the top of the standings? It's going to be Luke Lucchese, isn't it? Just shy of that 53 mark, 9/1000ths of a second at the moment. Tristan Denobriga, the 2 RDSA drivers, will be very pleased so far. They've got to turn it into, redo it in qualifying, however.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we're used to seeing RDSA Esports at the top of timing towers in the Evolution Sim Racing community. It's good to see a new name, obviously to me anyway, the Vulcan Motorsports Gold team up there as well. Quentin Verdonk in 3rd position as well. Vince Veskis in 4th position, doing pretty well. And it's good to see a mix of manufacturers at the top. We've got the Porsches, the Acuras, the Fords as well. Even the Corvette as well of Siad Ploeg, the Motorsports Gold driver as well for Vulcan. There's some fantastic names in this list, though, and ones that are really going to test my pronunciations, I can tell you. But what a fantastic stacked grid we've got once again here. Nearly 50 drivers in the field at the second round of the championship. It's just been so packed since, well, for the last God knows how many seasons now. It's such a sought-after community to be a part of, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and you make a good point. We've always been filling up very, very quickly, even back Season 5, Season 6, etc. before we went to 2 splits. And then we haven't struggled at all to fill both of those. So, it's really good to see. And yes, there are lots of new names, Chaz. More than I thought there would be, actually. I think probably maybe 20% of the grid are brand new drivers. And something that me and Dara have had a little bit of problems getting our teeth into. But now, I think we're on top of them. So, we'll forgive you for this one for sure. Because I've had a couple of issues throughout the first couple of races then. So let's have a little look, shall we, at maybe some of these new names for your benefit, and we'll have a look at some liveries as well, because I know you do love having a look at who might turn up to the championship, with a tasty looking livery.
Oh, look at this from Quentin Verdonk. It looks like an old VHS tape, doesn't it? It looks absolutely mega, that does, on this Porsche, the Vulcan Motorsports Gold entry, car 101. Obviously, we need to remember as well that in the 2 classes we have the number system, so anything that is lower than number 100 is the Pro class, anything above that is the Elite class. Normally you see that done the other way around, but I quite like that, we get the higher numbers for the higher place drivers. Let's have a look at the Lumen Motorsport team as well. Bruno Silva racing for those guys, currently in 15th position, 3rd in his class right now. Not far behind on the circuit, but another lovely looking race car, that, with the gold highlights all over it. Having a bit of a mischief to himself there around the first corner, but still just trying to get used to it. Now, let's not forget as well that in these sorts of conditions, you don't always want to be taking the ideal dry line, do you? You don't want to be sticking to the usual apexes, because at the end of the day, the car will just get away from you because there's so much rubber laid down beforehand. It might not be easy whatsoever. I've just noticed that there is a one William Humphrey in the championship as well, which is Vulcan Fasteners by Glasstec Racing. I'm not sure if that's anything to do with Vulcan Motorsport Gold or a dig at them, but Mr. Humphrey was absolutely decimating everybody in the GT4 championship that I raced in under the ESR banner, and I hope for his sake he does as well here as well, because he's a good lad as well.
Yeah, well, I'll fill in 2 points at once. That's actually the Vulcan Fasteners is a team which one of our drivers works for, should I say, in real life, in some sort of 24-hour GT4 championship. So the livery that William has, if I just flash that one up, is actually a replica of said livery in real life, which is really nice, courtesy of AB Designs, which is, I feel like Ashley's done a very, very good job. We set him the task of creating 3 or 4 of the same livery, let's say, across the Porsche GT3, GT4, the Mercedes GT3, GT4, so he's done a very good job. In fact, the team, the 5 of us, are actually going to Spa next weekend to meet sort of as a group. I've met them all occasionally. I've met Matt a couple of times, but yeah, we're all heading up to meet the Vulcan Fasteners lot as they set off on I think it's 2 6-hour races. I might be wrong there, but it's definitely a long race on the Saturday and another long race on the Sunday. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. But yeah, Will dominant in the GT4s. And he actually, like I said in the intro there, Chaz, he got a race victory in the reverse grid order this time last week, which kind of came as a bit of a surprise, to be honest. I knew it would be quick, he always will be, but some of the guys in this top split, you know, the likes of the RDSA guys, and Pinchazevsky's has proved himself to be quick. Sanity's proved himself to be quick as well. And Tech Plug won the race on the line against Lucchese last week. So for William to come into a new car, into an entirely new series, and stamp his mark straight away in the first round is really the kind of start that he wants.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly something that will boost your confidence if you have a good result at the start of a season and just really sort of get the blood pumping, and it'll give you that incentive to keep chasing. At the end of the day, the last thing you want is to start your championship with poorer results than you expected, or you know, just have the race meeting not go your way, because then you're constantly chasing, you're constantly recuperating those points as the championship goes on. And I know that for someone like Will, who, like we've said, he is rapid anyway, it'll just help his confidence that little bit to make sure that he's got that win under his belt to start the season as well. I'm just looking further down the list as well at some of the other drivers. There's a driver in the Pro category driving the number 93 Ferrari, of course, with a name like Biagio Cutrale. That is a proper racing driver name. I've probably way overdone it, and it's probably just Biagio Cutrale. But I'm calling him Biagio Cutrale, and he sounds like a villain in some sort of racing film. He's got a fantastic livery on that car as well. Ferraris do look good in other colours than red, I have to tell you. But yeah, it's great to see such a diverse grid again as well. A very international grid here in the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship. That's another thing that we've always enjoyed in previous seasons. And I must say, it's also very lovely to see more McLarens on the grid this time. It was our very own Alex Fretwell that was sort of repping the McLaren last season in the top split. And it's good to see that others have realised that despite its topsy-turvy tyres facing the wrong way on the rear, it's still a very good car.
Yeah, I think that was something we've highlighted already, actually, earlier in the championship, how it was a nice surprise to arrive and see a near, not quite, Porsche still dominates slightly, but, you know, the Acuras are in there, the McLarens are in there, and then a sprinkle of Ferraris and Mercedes is obviously good to see. I think we are missing the Audi and the Lamborghini in total, which is completely understandable, to be honest, but it's really nice to see a pretty, you know, equal split, 30% each way between those 3 manufacturers, which gives for a good championship, gives for good viewing, and it'll certainly make for a good qualifying session, of which is about to get underway. And yeah, Dominic Horvath-Sanity is one of the first men out on track. Let's follow on board him on his out lap, and then we'll find someone to go and follow around on the first flying lap, of course. The circuit will slowly begin to dry throughout the course of this evening. You can see the rain still pouring down at the moment, so no relief for these guys yet, but the forecast is for the end of the back portion of the race to start to become a bit drier. So let's see, I'm sure the race will start on that wet compound, but yeah, we'll see when we hit the crossover see who's first to bite the bullet and come in to change tyres. But for now, we've got 4 laps ahead of us, 15 minutes for the drivers to set their fastest qualifying laps. And in wet conditions or on a track like this, Chaz, doesn't really get much more challenging, I don't think.
No, absolutely not. It's certainly a circuit that requires a lot of commitment in a lot of these places. And when you've got that in the wet, you know, you have to really throw the car in at quite the angle. And obviously, you just have to believe that the grip is going to be there by the time you get to the corner. But I'm quite surprised not to see any Audis or Lamborghinis out there. I know they can both be quite the pig to drive sometimes because of their mid-engine nature. But at the end of the day, there's a number of other mid-engine cars out there on the circuit. What tends to be the general consensus then in the reason that people don't go for those two?
I've no idea, to be honest. I mean, I guess they might want to try the newer machines, of course. Everyone knows how good the Porsche is, but the McLaren and the Acura, new cars, maybe they fancy a little bit of a change. But I've never, you know, I'm surprised there's more Corvettes, for example, than there are some of those Lamborghinis or the Audi. I mean, I've never driven the Audi, and I believe you only had one Lamborghini in your session, or maybe 2 max. I had none in Split B, so for at least 2 or 3 seasons now here at ESR, it hasn't really been the favoured choice, especially as those, you know, the balancing comes out and the patches come out to make the likes of the Acura and the Mustang, as much as we might dislike the look of it, more of a viable option.
I don't mind the look of the Mustang, but it is the size of a housing estate. It really is a very boisterous and arrogant looking race car. I'm more opposed to looking at the front of the BMW because, as Ed May said, to be honest, if Ed loves it, and I don't know why Ed loves it, but we had an argument about whether it would be able to ingest a small child if it drove past the school last season, and it probably would because it is one horrific. Yeah, it's horrific looking thing. As right now, Dominic Horvath Shenardi just going a little bit deep there, to say the least. I just had a quick Google to see how you pronounce the Shenardi part of his name. It turns out if you write in Dominic Horvat instead of Horvath, that actually means Dominic is Croatian, which he is very much not. He's Hungarian. But Yun Gonzalez in the, well, it's clearly a Subaru, isn't it?
Clearly, that's a manufacturer that I didn't think was in here, but it's nice to see just one of them on. I'm not quite sure how I feel about that. I mean, it looks very nice. I'm a fan of Subaru, but on a Porsche, does it really work?
Might go well in the wet. If it's in tarmac spec, proper Monte Carlo tarmac spec, it might go well in the wet. I think that's, it looks like the old livery that used to be on the rally cars in the old Gran Turismo games when you used to race and modify them. You used to get a livery similar to that on the 22Bs and the like. We look here then at Tristan Dinabrega, about to cross the line. Oh, there actually is Ignace Vincev. I'm not going to get that one right today. Vincev.
I would say Vincezevskis. Well, I was explaining this to Dara. This to Dara last week. My partner watches the streams and she's Lithuanian, and I completely butchered the name. And she said you have to get this one right. And since then, it's been in my mind. So she says Ignace Vincezevski. So if you can remember what I just said,
because the S is silent at the end, isn't it? Vincezevski. Yeah, that makes sense.
Or Vincezevskis. It might be Vincezevskis. It was the bit that I was getting wrong was the middle part. So hopefully he's not watching because it's a complete butcher. But anyway, Ignace Vincezevski at the moment, top. Oh, well, no, he's not. William Humphrey, top at the front of the order, 57.180. I was going to follow on with Tristan, but then Ignace punched in that time. Who's about to cross the line? I would like to go on a full lap here. Let's ride on board with Malcolm Coates. He's at the front of that Pro Class. And we'll ride on board with him, Charles, and see how he gets on in these wet conditions, of course. So tricky, not only on the brakes in these conditions, you've got to be so careful not to give it too much pressure, otherwise you're just going to lock up, but also on the power. Look at that puddle on the left-hand side there, bringing it over to the right. So easy to lose the rear in the dry conditions up and over this crest. Never mind in the wet. Nicely gets the power down now toward the downhill braking zone. Got to keep it off the curbs, though. And let's see, just brake nice and early, down into first gear. You've got to just kind of miss the apex a little bit to avoid that standing water and back up on the power. But this section of the circuit, Chaz, is where it gets a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of very rounded off braking zones here. You're trying to get the car slow down here while going through the right kink, then straighten it up again before you get on the brakes once more. Turns it in, and it just doesn't give him what he wants at the front. You've got to be careful then reacting to that with the throttle pedal, because let's not forget, while these cars do have traction control, you would think that'd help you out, but in situations where you do spike it, it just stops you from having any control over what the car's doing. You can see here that he's having to get out of this one, and he's really slowed it down now as Malcolm. It's a very, very scary part of the lap, that. But again, it's the fact that, I can't remember who it was that mentioned it, but I heard a commentator say a while ago as Vinciszewski goes fastest once again, but if you flattened this circuit and made it completely level, like as flat as Silverstone, it would still be a difficult track. The undulation makes it just extra tricky. And right now, Malcolm, I mean, it doesn't look comfortable in this Acura, does it? Looks like it's a very heavy steering wheel, that.
It does. William Humphrey setting two purple sectors in the first and the second. That's good enough to put him right at the front, and what a lap time that is by the 198, nearly half a second quicker than some of the fastest drivers that we have here. Of course, William has swapped over to the Porsche. Chaz, he was in the Mercedes last week. He and his teammate Nick Stubb in B-Split decided to get away from the Mercedes. I think they tried it in the wet and realised that it was not going to be the same machine that it could be in the dry, and William absolutely got that Porsche on rails as it stands. He's still got 2 more laps to improve. Big statement lap there from someone who some of these guys won't even be familiar with, of course. Tristan and Luke will know a lot of these guys, and Williams come along. At the moment, he's put himself right at the front row of the grid.
Yeah, nearly half a second clear of Ignis as well. Siad Ploeg doing well in the Corvette in 3rd position. 3 different manufacturers in the top 3. Chris Jennings at the top of the Pro class by nearly 3/4 of a second there. 0.725 at the minute. He's going to be absolutely loving that. Decent gap over Bruno Silva, then Davy Daniels behind, Gilles Philippart's in there, Marcel Henschel in the thick of it too, but it's quite close between a few of those guys in that class. But if you look back actually from Lorenzo Gorgetto back to Ashley Brooks, 2.7 seconds there. Big old spread between those drivers. Ignace has just done another lap, but it's a 57.3 this time round. Half a second off his best lap whatsoever. And at the minute, there's only a few drivers that aren't out on the circuit. Bruno Silva, Miles Owens, Stephen Hobbs, Wayne Basson, Kostek Soloviej not out there. And there's a few guys at the moment, Joe, that haven't set times.
I was going to say most of those guys, yes, yet to set a time. Kalle Leskinen, a competitive driver in the Pro Division, of course. He's had a great start to his championship, just coming through toward the final sector now before he may set a valid lap time. Yet to do that, though, he has had one bite at it. Failed on that first attempt. Gilles Philipparts improves and goes into the front row of the grid in the Pro class in P2, but the gap is massive behind Chris Jennings, trying to get into the 57s, just 3/100ths of a second away from that. Meanwhile, William Humphrey sitting pretty right at the bottom of the 56s. So far, no one has a response for that Porsche. They might have wished that he'd stayed in that Mercedes then. The top 5, Porsche, Acura, Porsche, Corvette, and another Acura, so pretty split. In fact, look at that, all the way down the top 10. It's pretty much an interchange between those two, with a few Corvettes thrown into the mix.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? They're Corvettes as well. They'll break down before too long, so don't worry about it.
Oh, there you go.
But we've got certainly some manufacturers in there that are more dominant than others. Back to the Lithuanian driver, and currently, I mean, that livery looked great on the Porsche. It looks even better on that thing. It looks absolutely gorgeous. It almost looks iridescent because it looks like it's a different color from every angle you look at it. So it's almost iridescent. Very, very striking color scheme. Around the last corner he goes, and you can see they're having to be so hesitant as they go over that crest in the last corner there to make sure that they don't overdo it on the power and run wide. It is one of those corners that does drive you really, really mad lap after lap, and Ignis decides that that is the end of his. Justin Elof in 3rd position for RDSA. Here is Sam Derbyshire. I hope he actually does live there. In 9th place at the minute in the Corvette. It is interesting to see the Corvette because every time I've seen it, it just looks like a remote control car that's made out of really light plastic, and it doesn't want to go anywhere, and it always wants to spin. Victor Van Zeist, a very promising driver from last season, ends up 13th in class, 32nd overall. Chris Jennings has gone inside the top 10 outright. Currently finds himself top of Pro, just behind this man, Luke Lucchese. Just 4/10 between the purple sector from William Humphrey, but no improvement on his lap time.
Yeah, it's potentially a disappointing qualifying session there for both the RDSA boys, but also, more so, should I say, for Luke Lucchese. Down there in 7th, he's used to at least being in that top 5. He'll have a little bit of work to do, but he might be optimistic with this being, of course, a 1 hour session. Sorry, let me cut to another driver. With this being a 1 hour session, he knows that if he can get away clean, if he's got the race pace, then he can definitely try and get past a few drivers. But it's the first of this format that we've seen so far this season. Of course, only round 2, we're straight to it, but there was a lot of guys in the pre-season round, a fortnight ago at the Red Bull Ring. We had 56 drivers with us this time last week around Watkins Glen. Tonight we've got 45 on the circuit, 42 who have qualified, and so it's going to be one hell of a busy place to go. Plenty of runoff though, so you'd like to think if there's any sort of incidents, people can avoid it and try and go the distance. Those top 13 on the road are all set, and I can't remember a time, you may know better than I, Charles, from last season, but I can't remember a time where we've had such a big split between the classes in a qualifying performance. Basically half a second from Humphrey to the rest of the top 3, a second down to the top 6 more than. It's I'm not sure what that says about the quality of race that we're about to see. Fingers crossed people can keep with one another, but it's pretty spread at the moment in both of the classes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the wet weather can either be a great leveler, it can bring some drivers to the top that you don't normally see there, and it can really keep things close together because it's easier to find the limit there, or it throws an absolute grenade in at the timing tower and just blows the field wide open. And it seems like we've had a bit of the latter so far this evening. We look at the aforementioned Alex Fretwell in his very shiny McLaren, to say the least, the Racing League hub machine. Different colours slightly to what he ended last season with. Makes his way over the crest of the hill. Alex, not the only one flying the flag for McLaren this season, as we've mentioned, but certainly that puts him under even more pressure, I think, to show its performance off because there's more of them in the pack. He's down in 11th in the pro class right now. This is not what he would have wanted, but we had seen that he's good at just keeping himself to himself in races, is Alex, and he's good for the bigger picture. So it wasn't always that he was blisteringly quick in qualifying. That usually did go to Chris Jennings, actually, who is currently the fastest of all these drivers. So I'm excited to see how Alex gets on. What about Davey Daniels? You could ask Davey what's he got in his locker as he crosses the line in the Acura. Third place in class at the moment. Doesn't look like there's going to be an improvement there, and there is not. 158.847. And he's decided that that is the end of that. Only a few more drivers now to complete their laps, Joe. I think, actually, it's just going to be Alex Fretwell, this man here, Alexander Burt. It turns out if your name's Alex, you go out at the end of qualifying, because then it's Alexander Fuchster as well.
I was just about to say the same thing. Yeah, Alex is about to cross the line. We'll ride on as he does so. Shame for Mr. Leskinen, actually. I was thinking optimistically that he might be able to improve, one of the few drivers in the pro class left to go, the number 1, but he stayed where he was, did manage to set a lap time in the end of 58.83, which is good enough for P6 in Class P19 on the road. Here comes Alexander Burt, then one of our final 2 drivers to cross the line, and that's not going to be an improvement. That is a little bit of a wobble, and that McLaren, obviously, of course, open setups here tonight, so they'll all feel a little bit different, but it did look a little bit twitchy at the front for Mr. Fretwell. I wonder, has he committed maybe more to a bit of a dry setup, or I think that the way that this is going, the clouds are starting to clear up a little bit, but the rain still pours. The track will need time to dry up. Something will tell me that the vast majority of this race will be in wet conditions, so I'll be very surprised if anyone has set up for a majority dry race. Alexander Burke crosses the line. I don't think he improves. He's still down there in P18. And then we have this man, Alexander Freuter, in the Mustang, and that is the end of the session. He will not get a chance to improve.
No, and to be fair, I mean, the Ford Mustang should go well in the wet because it is the size of a cross-channel ferry anyway, so it usually does quite well on water. But to be honest, joking aside, you do usually, we've all seen it before in GT3 racing, that you want the larger cars in wet weather conditions because they have that. They're not heavier in any way. They always get very close to the minimum weight, but because they just naturally spread the weight of the car so well over all 4 corners, I'm thinking the likes of the Bentley Continentals, your Lexus RCFs, and your Ford Mustangs, of course. Even the older GT3 cars, like look back at the BMW M6, for example. They were all really good in wet weather conditions because they had that natural stability of having so much bodywork over all 4 corners. I had the pleasure of commentating on the 2020 Nürburgring 24 Hours when it was won by a BMW M6 GT3, one of my favourite GT3 cars of all time. And it just showed its strengths back then at a place like the Nürburgring, where wet weather really plays into it. So I'd expect in time, especially in race conditions, it might be a bit more drivable for the likes of the BMW M4s or the Mustangs. But then again, they are tricky in the first place. So it's whether the drivers know how to exploit their capability.
Yeah, it's going to be very tricky. Of course, at the start of this race, we'll have the full formation lap to give a chance for these cars to get a little bit temperature in them. But yeah, it's going to be tricky. Full fuel loads, of course, for this 1 hour race. And yeah, on those cold tyres, opening laps, let's see how we get on into turn 1. It's now time to run through the grid, which I'll take this one, Chaz, not to put you under some, undue pressure. With all those names, I feel like it's only fair that I try and rattle through them. So we've got about 45 to get through, starting first with your pole sitter. He'll be so satisfied with that because it's the first time he's sitting on the front row in a GT3 car in a league race. It's Mr. William Humphrey, the 198 for the Vulcans Fasteners Glass Tech Racing team, with a time of 1:56.388. Such a stark difference there. Best part of half a second ahead of the man he'll share the front row with. Ignace Vinciszewski's for Vulcan Motorsports Gold. We've got a Vul C can and a Vul K can sharing the front row of the grid. A little bit of healthy competition between those guys will be brilliant. Justin Ilov, the first of the RDSA drivers, will start in P3 ahead of Tjek Plug, the second of our Vulcan Motorsports Gold drivers. Tristan Drobniger and Kevin Daniels will round out row 3 ahead of Luke Lucchese and Raz Harper. Very strong performance by Chris Jennings to get himself inside the top 10 in that pro division, of course. He'll start ahead of the 4th and final RDSA car of Luke King. Luc van Gortel and Sam Derbyshire will round out row 6 ahead of Quinton Verdonk and Biagio Coutrele for Virtual Racing Team, the first of our Italian drivers. David Daniels and Gilles Philippart ahead of Bruno Silva and Bjorn Klassens, and it'll be Kalle Leskinen, a man who definitely has high hopes on his shoulders, I think, to try and progress during this race. We'll start ahead of Miles Owens, which rounds out our top 20. We'll then cycle on through to find Thomas Pugh ahead of Marcel Henschel inside the 11th row of the grid. Then it's Lawrence van der Water ahead of Dominic Holvers-Sanady and Jakob Krafek and Joshua Ness inside the top 26. Another Joshua Cohen ahead of Alex Fretwell, Malcolm Court and Alexander Burt, the top 30. Starting to see the end of the elite class now. And then it's Jimmy Vyman and Victor Van Zeiss before this cluster of pro drivers. Lawrence Sedapa, Stephen Codman, David Hutchison and Jeffrey Darman will be your top 36. Ahead of Lorenzo Gorgetto, our second of 2 Italian drivers, it will be Ashley Brooks, Alexander Freuter and Danny Phillips, the top 40. And then we'll find Evan Main, Jun Gonzalez, Stephen Hobbs, Wayne Basson and Kostek Siloviec, the last of our drivers. The back 3 not setting a lap time. It'll be interesting to see how Kostek gets on being the elite driver, mixing it among those pro drivers at the start of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be great to see how some of them make their way through this order, because it is, by all means, a bit of a topsy-turvy grid. You've mentioned the number 1 machine of Kalle Leskinen. We discussed the fact that upsets me a lot that he's wearing the number 1 because he's not reigning champion, but it shows either great arrogance or great confidence as he comes into the championship this season as part of the pink team. But you rightly said, though, Joe, we have Vul C can and Vul K can on the front row of the grid. I quite like that one. But again, just to mention, and everybody at home would have seen it there, that there's such a great international mix of drivers on this grid. We've got Polish drivers, Scottish, British, French, Belgian, drivers in America, Hungary, Czechia, Germany, Finland, Portugal, Italy, even, I believe, it's Northern Ireland, I think, not the Georgian flag.
There's a Puerto Rican in here as well,
yes,
I think.
There is. Jun Gonzalez is from Puerto Rico.
And not to mention the South
race.
Africans, of course.
Oh yeah, forgot about them lot. There's loads of them. But they're always at the top of the order. I was going from bottom to top in that when I was reading it out, and now they're all at the top, so stuff them.
Absolutely right. Well, Chaz, as I said, I think I'll leave this one over to you, mate. Let's hear those vocal cords going as we round the final corner. The pace car will come in. It's up to William Humphrey to drop the hammer, pretty much as the green flag drops. As we've said a few weeks now, we've got a new regulation so that as soon as that green flag is dropped, the leader must go within a second, and then everybody else follows suit after the car ahead leads them down. So over to you, Chaz, and we'll see you as we exit the first sector.
Christian Dinnebrega then hanging out to the right-hand side. And the second race meeting in Season 8 of the Evolution Sim Racing GT3 Championship, with William Humphrey on the front row, gets underway and the Porsche bolts away from the line. The NSX can't do anything about it. Tristan Dinnebrega clearly knows what he's doing, stays over to the right-hand side. Bit of a defensive move there from Ploeg as he tries to play rear gunner for his teammate. And we look further down the order to see how everybody filters through. Turn 1 is usually very high speed here at Portimão, but you can see they're having to take it nice and easy. And it looks like they've all kept themselves under control in these first few corners. Very nicely done. Nearly into-team contact there between Justin Eloff and Luke Lucchese as they headed out of turns 3 and 4 up over the crest. That's tough in the dry conditions, but look at this now. It's almost like these guys don't have team orders, isn't it? Justin Eloff trying to hold on. Tristan Dinnebrega goes around the outside, says thank you very much. There's drama further back. A DDK McLaren around. Oh, dearie me, that's Danny Phillips. And he joins some of the other guys on the infield.
Yeah, it went wrong right from the start for Tjek Plug and Gilles Philippart. They fell right down the order, and then we picked up, as I'm not sure who that was right at the start, Alexander Burt, Danny Phillips were caught up right at the start, and then from there, sadly, it was a little bit of a car park at the over the crest, over the left-hand crest, which is, of course, as you rightly said, Chaz, tricky enough in the dry, even more difficult in the wet, and sadly, it's caught a lot of these drivers out. Just a quick look at the timing sheet then. Lawrence van der Water, Hovig Sanity and Gilles Philippart's back in the pit lane already. Tjek Plug, Silva, Henschel, Owens and Phillips down quite a few positions. All the while, that has helped out the likes of Lawrence Sedapa, Alexander Freutzer, who were up back into the middle of the field. But more or less, the drivers in the top 10 have stayed put, give or take 1 or 2 positions. William Humphrey and Ignace Winczewski's leading the way here. Humphrey's got a nice margin already. Winczewski's an even bigger margin to Dinnebrega, and then it is the 3 RDSA drivers of Dinnebrega, Eloff and Lucchese who go one, then the next, and then the other, as Justin Eloff looks like he's got a good run here on the back of that Acura as they cross over to start the second lap of this race. And 1 hour ahead of them, and it looks as though Dinnebrega is going to be under pressure from his teammate already. The 2 DDKs have sort of, well, he's been left, hasn't he? Luke Lucchese left behind a little bit by his counterparts as Dinnebrega runs wide. That allows the Porsche through the inside. He's going to be ahead, and the DDKs have got past Lucchese as well. Terrible for the 2 familiar RDSA drivers that we're so used to seeing dominate this championship, not having the best of it at the start of this one.
No, absolutely. He just got mugged there, did Luke Lucchese. I think he just ran a little bit wide into turn 1. Great to see Justin Eloff and Tristan Dinnebrega so close to each other as well. Big talk in the car world was that there was a massive join between the likes of, I think it was Honda and Nissan earlier on in the year, and now it seems like they want to try their own merger there with Acura and Porsche. As, big send up the inside by the Vulcan Mustang. Then again, any send at the Mustang's a big one. It's like having a housing block thrown at your face. Bjorn Claessens lobs it upside Davy Daniels. They've got Kalle Leskinen behind them, but these 2 are in different classes, you see. Bjorn is in the elite class. Bit of damage on that front left of his car. I wonder if he was involved slightly in the earlier incident. He'll have even more left front damage on it if he carries on like that. Let's have a look then at this move. Bit of slipstream down the inside, and to be fair, he's done really well there. He made his intentions clear early on, and so too did Davey as well. He said, look, I'm defending this, but he just stuck with it, did Bjorn. Hats off to him. Good stuff.
Got it slowed down, looked a little bit twitchy, which of course it would in these conditions, but yeah, he's got a little bit of damage, I think, on the front left of that car. The tyre's seen better days, and you can see on the entry into these corners he's struggling just ever so slightly to get that in the right direction. Let's ride on board. Let's ride on board with him and see how he gets on. Does he have a little bit of steering damage, perhaps? Is that going to struggle in a straight line? It looks okay on the exit there. This will be telling as he goes over what is a pretty high-speed corner, of course, nearly flat out in the dry. It'll be a big fat lift in these conditions, I'm sure. Does he have a little bit of steering damage there? Looks like it's just about in a straight line, but it doesn't look perfect.
No, to be fair, I mean, it's a Mustang anyway. It doesn't like going around corners at the best of times, and if you put a crowd of people on the outside, it's bound to go into it. So he's doing all right to keep it on the straight and narrow at the minute. At the moment, we've got these 2 Porsches fighting. Laurens de Dapper, he had a very exciting Season 7, did Laurens de Dapper. He's side by side with another driver that did as well, Victor van Zeist. And to be fair, he's actually backed off there. I wonder if he had some sort of slowdown penalty from earlier in the lap. They've got Yun Gonzalez in the Subaru behind them in car number 3. There's a car rejoining there just coming out of the pit lane. I think that might have been one of the DDK cars, maybe Gilles Philippart's. Here is the Porsche of Jeffrey Dahman, just taking on Lorenzo Gorgetto in the Ferrari. Gets his nose down the inside as they go over the crest. It's not easy to keep the car tucked in there. Manages to get away with it. Some great battling in the opening stages here, though, Joe. Nobody wanting to take it easy. There's gravel and bits all over the track from where people have recovered earlier. But the sun is shining now, and that means that... Oh, hello. Well, Jeffrey Dahman's decided he wants to just go and visit the outside of the circuit. But, yeah, sun's shining. Could it dry out quickly?
Yeah, well, let's see. We've got a lot of action up and down the track. I don't want to keep jumping around too much, but we don't want to miss much. Luke Lucchese around the outside there of the Acura. Brilliant move. We'll have to go back and check that one out. He temporarily lost the place, but he's immediately made it back within 3 or 4 corners there over Raz Harper. So Lucchese can now try and set off after the cars in front. Ironically, it's another DDK machine, of course. I think that's going to become a little bit of a rivalry, of course. Those guys right toward the front of the elite standings. 4 RDSA cars, 3 DDK cars at minimum. And we saw the same last week, so it'll be interesting how those guys get on. Just as things settle down then, I wanted to go and have a look, see if we can see what unfolded right at the start with all this. Oh yeah, a little bit of a turn in there from that Porsche on the outside. He couldn't catch it up, and then from there, you're just a passenger in that scenario. People actually doing very well to slow down there, apart from 1 or 2. But generally speaking, most people have seen the danger there and got out the way. Sadly for them, though, once you've moved, someone else can come and barrel you out the way. But that could have been a lot worse. I think a lot of people did well to try and avoid that one.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of runoff, like you said earlier in the broadcast, Joe. People spreading out nicely during that incident. To be fair, I think the McLaren that got turned around in all of that, was it? No, it was Danny Phillips, wasn't it, that got turned around, the white and blue McLaren. He was really unlucky because he slowed down and went around the incident, but he kept the brakes on to make sure that he was still going slowly over the curbs. And another car just gave him the slightest kiss on the backside and threw him around into the sort of cesspit that was the accident on the left-hand side over on the grass. Big shame, but at the end of the day, everyone's trying to avoid everyone, so it's going to happen at some point. But yeah, I think it was definitely the 77 of Bruno Silva. He just, I don't know if he didn't know the Ferrari was on his left-hand side or what, but he turned into the corner as if he wasn't there, and that was the initial contact that set it all off like one massive snowball effect. Still, we go on board now with Joshua Ness in the McLaren. Very interesting sounding race car is the McLaren, and once you've heard just how loud the upshift clicks are on the paddles, you can never unhear them. He's chasing down the number 13 of Jeffrey Dahman, and then ahead of him is Lorenzo Gorgetto. 2 of them just tiptoeing their way around the circuit. 3 different manufacturers all up against each other here. It's great to ride on board, but even there, look, over the crest of the hill, the car still wants to break away in a straight line. Lorenzo sideways, Joshua, well, I mean, he's going to be looking like the Loch Ness Monster at the minute, isn't he, trying to find his way through all this spray and liquid. But he's just crawling around all over the back of this Porsche. He's got to get ahead of it soon.
Yeah, really struggling, you can tell. Look at that, the overspeed that he carried through that left-hander. He's been forced just onto the white stuff. You don't want that. You need to keep it away from the curbs. Around the outside, the X-Axis Sim Sports driver looks, but he can't make that one stick at the moment. Jeffrey Dahman, we saw earlier, struggling with the front end of that Porsche through the exit of turn 5. Struggling through, it seems, most of these corners at the moment. A little bit of damage on the front side of his machine, which won't be helping him, of course. He's got 50 minutes to try and hold on unless he wants to come in and get that repair, but he has got a good run now over Lorenzo Gorgetto, who's in that Ferrari, stuck on what will be the outside line going into turn 1. What's Joshua going to think about here? Is he going to stay back and try and get the good run here? Up the inside goes Jeffrey. Is he going to have the overlap? Backs out, allows the Ferrari to go through. It doesn't look like the McLaren has quite got the run that he would hope for. Or we're going to see a send. He's got to try and get past it. In fact, we rode on board with him at this moment last lap. He tried the exact same thing, a little bit of a look to the right-hand side, but nothing committed. And it looks as though he's going to have to stay where he is for the time being. The Porsche and the McLaren both sliding as they crested over turn 4. And Jakob Klavek under pressure. That car's seen better days. That's Kalle Leskinen, who's done so well at the start of this championship. Qualifying wasn't his best, and now I think he's going to really struggle to mount any sort of challenge with that high drag package that he's got on the front of that Porsche. That's going to be horrific to try and turn into these corners, never mind in a straight line.
Yeah, it's active weight saving, but it's not quite in the right direction. He's flashing the lights as well. I'm not quite sure what he feels that Jakub Krafek owes him at this moment. They're in different classes, sure, but Jakub is, if either of them, oh, dearie me. If anything, I was going to say Jakub is the one that doesn't really have any obligation to get out of the way, as Catrali there in the Ferrari making a bit of a fool of himself. And to be fair, Jakub Krafek sort of understeered into him at the same time, didn't he? No, sorry, Jakub was on the outside, and then the Ferrari of Biagio Catrali just ran wide. That was a very, very strange incident. And then it wasn't the tidiest clean-up afterwards, but yeah, you'd imagine that right now Jakub Krafek will be a little bit miffed with that one. Not exactly what he wanted. Back further up the order, Luke King. Well, he's all over the road, is Luke.
How is he
Wow. Ride
Yeah,
him,
wow.
cowboy. Luke Van Gortel goes through, and that's Sam Derbyshire just ahead in the DDK Corvette going through. He's now got Quinton Verdonk behind him. But wow, Luke King will be hoping to have some new overalls for the rest of the lap and the rest of the race. It's worth noting as well, Joe, they're all on wet tyres still. Nobody risking it on dries at the start of this one.
I've just seen an incident between Justin here, but he seems like he's okay. Actually, I was thinking it was heating up right toward the front of this one. He was right on the back of Ignas Vinciszewski's ahead. William Humphrey, 5 seconds up the road. He's having a blinding start to this race. We'll ride on board with him shortly, but for the time being, more battles up and down the order. A little bit of a tyre screech, it seemed there.
Yeah,
but
I
Ignas
heard that.
was with him at the front. He's dropped off the back, and now he's under pressure from the top 5. So let's keep our eyes on that one over the next few laps. There's more drama going on here inside the hairpin at turn 5. That's Cutrale, who I believe might have just been passed by Krafek ahead. Victor Van Zijs got past him as well up the inside. There's been an issue for Miles Owens also in amongst all of that. It looks as though there must be okay between Kevin Daniels and Justin Eloff, because he's still riding high at the front of the order. But things are about to settle down, and you're totally right, Jazz. I don't think anybody will be going onto the dry compound anytime soon, of course. You don't want to have to pit too early, especially not in these conditions. You want the fuel tank to run low, see how close you are to the dry conditions first, and if you can maybe make the switch and be brave, then we'll see. But the last time I remember having these wet to dry conditions, I think, was Sebring last season, and we saw a few guys taking some pretty big risks. Some guys actually taking no risks at all and finishing the race on the wet tyres, which have been absolutely screaming to be taken off. But some of them, I think, took it a little bit too early, and in the end I think it cost them a hell of a lot of lap time. So we'll see if anything is similar here, but around a circuit like this, it's risky enough in any condition. To be on the wrong compound, it's just not worth it, is it really?
No, absolutely, and you risk going the wrong way very, very quickly in each direction. So obviously if you go onto the dries well too early, then you're not going to have the grip and you're going to lose the lap time. If you go onto the wets and you stay on them for too long and it starts drying out, then you're just going to be melting the tyres completely on that dry surface. You're going to be ruining any potential groove they've got, and they're just going to feel awful. The two drivers that I think had an issue before were Marcel Henschel and Ashley Brooks. Ashley still seemingly having some sort of drama somewhere. He keeps losing positions time after time. I think he's maybe had an incident and then had a couple of spins after it since then, maybe due to damage, maybe due to some drama that he's had somewhere. Stephen Hobbs, brave enough to be in the Mercedes. It's a shame, really, because I've always said that the Mercedes, for me, it's a stalwart of GT3 racing, is the Mercedes-AMG GT3. And it is a shame that with iRacing's BOP and just how tricky it is to drive in iRacing, it's not really a car that you see used all that often, is it?
No, it's not. And like you said, I said earlier, William Humphrey decided to arrive in that car and immediately took that deduction just to get out of it. So he's hit himself with a 50-point swing, but I think he'll be feeling that that was the absolute correct decision, considering the fact, look at that, a 56.0 he's just set there, the fastest lap, his fastest lap of the race as things progress. So he'll be very happy with his decision, nearly 6 seconds clear, and he'll be pleased to see all the while on his relatives that Justin Eloff is putting pressure on Vinciszewski's ahead, so that will allow him to stretch his legs even more, extend that margin, make his life a whole lot easier. I did want to highlight Tjerk Plug here, because he, I believe, is the biggest loser of the start. 32 positions lost. He dropped that, I think it was going through probably even before he reached turn 3. It was before the pile-up. And there's another issue there, and that's Bruno Silva and Ashley Brooks, who's going careering off over the gravel. He is going to get that one slowed down. No, he's not, and that is a bonk into the barrier. Sadly for Ash, he didn't finish the race last week. And let's see, is he going to continue, or is that his night over?
I think he let go of the wheel there, Joe. I think he was shouting expletives at Bruno Silva for whatever happened there. Bruno, unfortunately, does seem to be a driver that gets himself in a lot of incidents. And, I mean, Ash does too, but, well, you ask Ash, it's never his fault, but he does get a lot of bad luck, does Ash. Like I say, he lost a bunch of positions earlier. They were side by side, up over the crest of the hill. He's given room on the outside, just enough. I think he might understeer wide here. And yes, he does. He understeers wide into Bruno. And to be honest, you know, I admittedly went straight for Bruno's throat there, but I don't think that was on him. Ash, really, it wasn't on either of them too much. It was just a racing incident. They're fighting through a high-speed corner in tricky conditions. Ash just understeered into him, I'm afraid. Yeah,
I wanted to see that one from Ash's perspective, because you're right, it looked as though it was tricky. I wonder if he was able to take any more speed out of that. The car was nicely alongside. You can see that water on the outside there. He does lift nicely, gets up on the curb a little bit. Yeah, it's an unfortunate one. And sadly for Ash, the Porsche's turned back into him, and then he's let go of his wheel.
He's let go. You can see him soaring at the wheel as he headed towards the barrier. He definitely let go of that. He's thrown it out the window. He's turned the PC off. That is, toys out the pram, unfortunately, but understandably so. He'd be frustrated with that, but hopefully Ash can look back at that one and realise it was a bit of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there. Bruno was trying to leave him room. Obviously, he couldn't disappear off the circuit, but Ash also tried to stick it to the inside. The car just didn't give him what he wanted at the end of the day, and that's what you sort of risk when you're battling in these sorts of conditions. So I'm afraid it didn't quite work out for him. We ride on board now with 4th placed Tristan Dinabrega, and he's got Ignace Vinchevesky, that one in front of him. Vinchevesky, is that it?
Yeah.
Vinchevesky. Yeah, we're going to go with that.
Yeah.
Ignace Vinchevesky in front of him. Justin Elof just in front of that as well, though. This is the battle effectively now for 2nd position. William Humphrey 6 seconds up the road from these guys. He's absolutely dominating this race at the moment, showing an absolutely wonderful performance to us all here at Evolution Sim Racing. And right now, these guys, I was going to say just taking it easy, but boy, that was squirrely down the hill, wasn't it? Flipping heck sunshine. Just shows you on the limit, though, where these guys are at. You know, they're really dancing on that knife edge of grip, aren't they, with mid-corner speed and being able to save it when it does get away. But, I mean, all it takes is one little snap in the opposite direction, Joe. You and I have both done it before, and you're suddenly heading into the barrier. Yeah,
it really is tricky. And as we've said time and time again, in these conditions, it can be there 1 second and it's gone the next. And that can happen in the dry, of course, too, but it's so tricky. You think the brakes are fine, then they lock. You think the car's going to turn in, and then it doesn't. And you get confident. Obviously, with the track drying lap after lap now, the rain has stopped pouring. The clouds have gone away, at least on this side of the circuit, and the puddles will probably remain for some time. It looks as though they're heading over to the right-hand side, maybe to cool the tyres off a little bit. You can see the colour difference there between what would be the drier racing line and then that very, very damp inside of the track. Curb still treacherous, but Tristan's been here before, and it doesn't look like Justin is hanging about to give his teammate any support. He's just off and up the road, and he's going to try and gain an advantage. I'm sure Dinabrega will feel that he can get past Vinchevesky's himself, but it wouldn't be bad to have your teammate just backing you up in that in your own corner. Luke Lucchese hasn't gained a position. He and Humphrey actually the only drivers in the top 10 who have stayed where they started. And is that just an off at the base of the corner? No. Okay, it looked as though he went a little bit deep. But he's held on to it.
I was just going to say there, if we could, Joe, just have a look at Davey Daniels in the DDK Acura. He's leading the way in his pro class at the moment. 11th overall. He's got Luke King right behind him in the RDSA Porsche, but then just behind that is Chris Jennings as well. Now, Chris is in the number 22 car. They've got the 92 of Lawrence van der Wouter in there with them, but he's a lap down. So much like he is on the timing screen, he's in a very fluorescent, almost cyan machine. But he's in his right to sit there as long as he's not really getting in Chris's way. To be honest, he's benefiting probably from being right behind Luke King. But having this little buffer here for Davey is going to be so important, isn't it? There's probably an absolute myriad of jokes we can make about the name Davey and driving over water, but not in an Acura, but more in a boat. But still, he's doing a great job at the top of this class right now, and it's good to see DDK so well represented because they had a few cars in it last season, and they seem to have really come out in numbers this time round, and they've certainly got a great, great lineup for this season.
Yeah, they're doing a new team, of course, on the block, and making the most of it. They've sort of done what DXT often do and put in a handful of teams, all competing in the same championship. And sorry, what was that?
Nothing.
Okay, I genuinely didn't hear what you said, so we'll let that one slide. Oh, there you go. And we missed a moment there. I think there was a small issue for Danny Phillips, who's gone off the circuit, and then I think Luke Van Gortel managed to get past Sam Derbyshire, so that's an exchange for P8 in the elite class. The gap's just opening up here on the back of David Daniels. As he said, he'll be pleased that he doesn't have Chris Jennings right on his back. Looks like we've got an overtake just heading down through turn 10, I think it is, between Danny Phillips and Steve Hobbs further down the pack. Aside from that, though, things opening up. Not too many battles, close battles at least, out on track. As you can see, Tristan Dorobriga at the moment is the driver putting pressure on that top three, but I think things will remain the same, of course. 1/3 of the race complete, 2/3 to go, and we won't necessarily be seeing those mandatory pit stops coming into play probably for another 15-20 minutes or so until the fuel tanks run out, as long as you keep it in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the part of the race now where people try and just focus on being in a rhythm. They know who they're battling, they know who they've got around them on the circuit, who is a threat, who's not, and you know, they have to identify threats in other forms. They have to think about lap traffic if there's certain parts of the circuit where the car isn't behaving itself, and then of course think about their own tyre life and when they're going to pit. There's a lot going through a driver's mind here, and something that people often forget is that a lot of the times in sim racing, it's not a driver with a pit wall of 5 people behind them giving them information on everything. The driver is not only racing and looking at where other people are with the information they get from the sim, but they're thinking about their own tyres, their own fuel, their own race, talking to their teammates. They do so much multitasking, the sim racing drivers, and that's what makes it even more impressive, especially when you're trying to hold onto a Mustang like Bjorn Klaassen's is right now. That thing definitely wants the front end to be overtaken by the rear end in very Mustang-esque fashion. It doesn't look comfortable in wet conditions, that thing, does it?
No, well, it never does really, but particularly not now, and particularly not in these conditions either. We're starting to just creep toward that point where every lap could feel a little bit different, of course. When the rain pours and the whole circuit is pretty much, you know, solidly wet, it's pretty much the same every time you lap the circuit. But when it starts getting a little bit dry, of course, you've got to remember we've got 40 cars lapping over this circuit every 2 minutes, let's say. So every time you approach a braking zone, you could get a fraction more out of it, and a fraction more every time. You don't want to be too confident, which I'm sure some people will try to be, but you also don't want to rest on what you've been doing for the whole race, because that is not the optimal way to improve the lap time. So we are slowly getting toward that point. You can see the spray still being kicked up, but it's all about that colouring on the tarmac to try and pick out exactly where the dry lines are. Most of it will be the normal racing line, of course, but you will see some areas of the track where you might use a lot of the curb. You'll see that those are still covered in water, covered in puddles, and you've got to stay well away from those. Luke King has had an issue, I think. I'm not sure where he is on the timing page. Here he is. He looks okay. The car seems like it's in good shape, but he may have just had a little touch with somebody there, I think, Chaz. There we go then, down the inside of turn 5, runs wide, not really an incident, I'm not sure why it's flagged up like that, but he is back on the circuit and going again. So it's more of an off-track for the 199 than it is for an incident or for a race crash, should I say. I'm not sure if we've lost you there, Chaz. I did hear a little bit of a... He's back, good stuff. I did hear a little bit of a click.
I don't know what happened then, but like Discord on everything just died for me. Absolutely died. Went on it on my phone to then message you and say, oh, bear with. And then it said everybody was offline. Everything had just gone for a second there on Discord. Not
well, at least we're still here to catch this action, because it's as if one Mustang wasn't big enough. There's now 2, although he's been able to get past him nice and easily. Joshua Cohn there around the outside in the McLaren. Probably not what you want to see as a McLaren driver. 2 Mustangs blocking the road. Thankfully, though, he's been able to get past just one of them. And ironically, actually, it's his teammate, isn't it? So maybe not wanting to hold him up a little bit. Something that you may or may not have noticed, Charles, last season, of course, we had the Axis Sim Sports team. And now, believe it or not, we've got the X, the Y, and the Z axis. So
I like
they're all over the place. And I was
absolutely
actually, in pre-season, I was thinking, surely that's not a coincidence. And then I checked B-split and realised that the Z-axis is in there as well. So, yeah, we've got all the axes all over the place. One of them's in a McLaren, one of them's in a Ford, and has been chased down by one of our, well, top drivers, I'd say, in the Pro class, who's up 3 places, started in P6, now up onto the podium, except he's got a huge gap to try and overcome behind the number 22 machine of Chris Jennings, something that he'd be doubtful of achieving, I'm sure, so he's got to be careful around the likes of Pugh and Claessens, who are battling in their own race, of course, trying to get back inside that top 10 in the elite division. Leskinen might just fancy... Oh, there goes the Mustang. Around in the Vulcan, gets himself off the circuit, back going again. That's 1 place more for the rest of these drivers.
Yeah, he's made a little bit of a meal of that, unfortunately, has Bjorn Claessens, but gets back underway. You can definitely see how much the circuit's drying out now. These wet tyres are going to start to get shredded. In fact, the first person I can see that... Oh, no, actually, he's not back out on circuit, but Joshua Ness.
Oh, I think he might have gone again, so we'll cover him. Joshua Ness, I'm not quite sure what that point was going to be about Joshua. Let me see where he is on the circuit. I don't see him at all. So we'll cut away from that one. Luke Van Goortel in the pit lane. First man in the pits, seemingly optionally. And let's see, as he pulls into the pit box, he is changing tyres. Is he going onto that dry compound? We'll have to go and take a look. We do have the tyre compounds available then. He is. Wow, Luke Van Goortel then, the first driver to commit onto the dry tyres. 33 minutes left in this race session. That's a long time to go. If you get this one wrong, he's back down off the jacks and he's moving again. We've got to ride on board with him then and see how those track conditions are. Is it a stab in the dark, perhaps, for some of his teammates? Or is he just deciding to do it for the benefit of his own race? Let's hear the traction as he comes out the pit lane. Oh, God, it sounded better like. That does not sound ideal for the Porsche. A little bit wobbly was that traction control on the way out. But you can see, as Chaz said rightly there, there really is, that tarmac is lifting. The brightness is coming back. And that's exactly the kind of shade. Look at that. The shade on the entry to turn 4 here is exactly the colour that dry tarmac is. So there is a dry line forming. That's something that Luke is trying to take advantage of at the earliest opportunity, trying to get heat into those tyres with a little bit of a wobble on the steering, down into the braking zone at turn 5, then doing what he can do to keep it off of the wet stuff. If he goes deep, or if he tries to make an overtake or gets forced off the racing line, of course, that's when it might get a little bit difficult for the 126 Dutchman. So far so good though on this outlap. He's got to avoid that curb. A little bit of a twitch on the entry is not what he wants to see. A little bit deep there. The rear's stepping round. Is he going to hold it? Or is it the wrong decision? Is this the wrong decision? We'll have to wait and see. Gravel on the tarmac. It's going okay, but what he can't afford to do is lose too much time fighting the car on these dry tyres. He's got to try and stick with it and try and keep up with the pace. We'll see what his lap time looks like when he crosses the line, of course, for the second time, but he's struggling a little bit in these high-speed corners over the top of the crest. Couldn't get that one slowed down. The DDK machine drives straight on by. He's a good example at the moment is Luke Van Goortel. He's got his teammate in behind him, Victor Van Zijs, who's, of course, still on that wet compound. Everybody still on that wet compound, and even he is sliding as they came around the penultimate corner there. Let's see how he gets on then. We'll check some lap times in a short while. Oh, no, we won't, because he's gone, and we thought it might have been a little bit soon. Once you're up on the grass, you don't stand a chance, because that grass is extremely slippery, and he's going to have to rejoin. Sadly for Luke, he's going to have to stick with his decision now. It would make no sense to come in and go back onto the wet compound, because the track is drying, but it may just be a lap or two a little bit soon. Oh, it looks as like I've left the Discord. Bear with me. I have indeed. Let me just message Chaz and say mine's gone too. So the stream is still up, which is very strange. Well, what is that? The stream is still up. My connection is still here. But Discord is gone. I wonder if there's another method that we can resolve this by, because we need Mr. Draycott in the booth. There's no point bringing him in to lose him as we cross over the halfway point, so I'm going to keep my eyes on the Discord, see if we can get back online with that. Interestingly, it works on my laptop, and I think it's working on my phone. Bear with us, everybody. That's right, on board with Thomas Pugh for the meanwhile. The closest battle that we have out on the circuit, trying to get themselves inside the top 10, while I try and resolve what on earth is going on with Discord. Okay, Chaz is confirming that other people are having problems in general. So it looks as though it might just be myself for the time being. Let me see if Chaz can think of a way to resolve this. The Discord is gone now on the phone. So it looks as though, sadly, it might just be me here now, which is always well, not that bad, of course, but it's a little bit of a shame. We got so far, so good. Wide goes the McLaren, through goes the Mustang. Teammates passing one another. I guess all we can do then is wait. If I was to close Discord here and reopen it on my laptop, something tells me that it probably won't work. If I join... Yeah, it's not working. Well, damn. That is a shame. Anyway, we have a show to get on with, so I apologise to Chaz, but there's nothing I can do about this. As soon as I see Discord reappear, I will be straight back in with him. Quinten Verdonk is the next man on the dry tyre. Luke Van Goortel still hanging on there. Let's see what his lap time was. It was a 1:56.9, which is actually not too bad at all, so he might have made the right call here, because some of these guys have to be very treacherous not to stay off it too long, because as Chaz said, you just melt the rubber on those wet compound of tyre. At the inside, does the McLaren think about it? Yes, he does on his teammate. No defence there by Thomas Pugh in letting Joshua Cohn through, of course, fighting inside the top 4 in the Pro class. So he's got some work to do at the moment. Let's ride on board with this man, William Humphrey. We haven't seen him for such a long time, starting to come through lapped traffic. And yeah, I mean, I did not expect Will to turn up tonight and be so dominant. He's got a 6-second gap ahead. Setting 56s on the regular is the 198, and he's going to be pretty clear. As long as he can get through the lap traffic without too much of an issue, then he will stay ahead. I'm sure he's building up a nice margin so he can control his own pit stop when he likes it. Through turn 2 he goes, then heading up 3, and now over the crest at 4. And he's just got that Ferrari, no, it's the Corvette ahead of him to try and get past Tjerk Plug. He is competitive. It's interesting, actually. Let's see how long it takes Mr. Humphries to get by, because Tjerk, of course, qualified right up there at the start, and he had that incident at the start of the session, so it'll be very tricky if these guys share pace. William doesn't want to sit in behind the dirty air for too long if he can avoid it, because most of the drivers that he's driven past under blue flags, he's probably had a little bit better pace than. Kalle Leskinen setting the fastest lap time of the session. I think that is a 50, what was it, a 55.9, 59.89 it was for the number 1, as he cements that place inside the top 3. Drop that margin down to 12 seconds now in behind Chris Jennings. Still a lot of work for him to do, but gaps appearing up and down the grid then. Not too much giving, and only a handful of these drivers on that dry compound of tyres. Not going so well for Verdonk, Van Gortel and Horvath Sanity. Lawrence van der Water, sadly for him, he's had an incident as he heads around the right-hander, then up and over the hill. Let's see, gets on the brakes and goes for a little spin. Maybe the rear's just locking there. Did the car in front cause him to just sort of check up a little bit on himself? Not quite sure, but that's Lawrence with a nice, simple mistake to make. Gets the car going again nicely. Here's Luke Lucchese then. He's on the back of Kevin Daniels, trying to get himself back into the top 5. David Daniels in behind him, up 8 places off the start. It's been a brilliant session for the number 26 leading the pro class at the moment. And here's Luke Lucchese then trying to get past the DDK driver ahead. Kevin Daniels doing well to defend as one of the Italians comes out of the pit lane. I believe that is Gorgetto coming through now in behind all of these lead drivers. Let's ride on board with Lucchese and see if he can open up the steering. Trouble is, you're stuck really because you only have one racing line. It's difficult to do any switchbacks around a circuit that's drying because you want to stay off that stuff. So very, very difficult for Lucchese. You can see he's got a lot of pace, maybe a little bit stuck behind the Acura at the moment, who goes a little bit deep. Could be a good opportunity for Lucchese to get by then. He's got the traction. They're going to go side by side through the kink of the left, but he's going to lose out around the outside. Is he going to be able to get that one to stick? They do make contact. Up the inside goes the DDK machine. Luke Lucchese still side by side. They're still coming together. Lucchese with amazing hands there to keep that car pointing in the right direction. That was incredible. It was almost guaranteed for him to go off the circuit there, and they're still going side by side, the pair of them, as they head up and over the crest in toward turn 10, the trickiest corner on the circuit. Lucchese says no thank you as one of the Vulcans has gone off. That's Justin Eloff is around, I think, along with Luke Van Gortel, who's gone off the circuit. Brilliant move by Lucchese, committed all the way from the entry to turn 5. He's got it done by the entry to turn 13. Back comes the Acura up the inside. Lucchese leaves the space then. This is frantic between these two drivers as they battle over the final place on the podium in the elite class. It's advantage Lucchese for the time being, but that was a brilliant battle between the two of them. They were so close to both going off the circuit. In the end, though, they've managed to hold on. Lucchese leads into P3 ahead of Kevin Daniels, sitting in P4 at the moment. Both of them yet to pit. So here's what happened to Justin Eloff just a moment ago. The 3 drivers in behind them, I think. Does he spin? And does that cause an issue for the drivers in behind? That's a huge whack into the barrier. And then the Vulcan driver just gets absolutely swallowed up by him. Is that Quinton Bedonk, perhaps, who has this issue? Let me see if I can find him in the timing tower. Is this him? No, it's not. It's somebody else who gets caught up. But what a horrible impact that was by Justin, as he went smack into the barrier there, the exact place that you don't want to be, and then you're stuck on the racing line. And that is him done and around there by the looks of things. I'm not quite sure who it was who made contact with him there, but sadly for him it was one of the Vulcan Motorsports Gold cars who just was met by an RDSA machine sideways. Wow, this is a powerful looking livery. The red, white and blue of the United States, I believe that is, on the number 5, Steve Codman. We have him down as a Brit, although that is definitely a very bright and colourful livery, donning the stars of the States. The number 5 doing well at the moment actually is Steve. He's got quite a big gap to Alex Fretwell, who's come into the pit lane actually. He's about to leave the pit exit, I think, as he puts on his dry tyres. He's probably the 10th driver, I would say, to fit those slick tyres. It's getting to about that time now. William Humphrey, he's in the pit lane too. And look at that, he's actually next door to another car who's just forced him offline a little bit. Humphrey doesn't want to get caught up in this, of course. You can just drive through cars in the pit lane, of course, so no need to dart out of the way. But the race leader in the pit lane now, as Denobriga takes him. Lucchese and Kevin Daniels follow him in, and so Denobriga momentarily inherits the lead of the race, looking for the overcut perhaps, but the gap is way too big. So unless Humphrey has a disastrous pit or a disastrous outlap, he will reclaim that race lead when we come round to it in a few moments' time. Sadly, Discord is still not back, so we still don't have access to Mr. Draycott, which is such a shame because we were looking forward to this for quite some time. It's probably been a good 6 weeks in the making have we had this arranged, because sadly Mr. Dara couldn't be with us tonight with other things to attend to. I guess I don't actually know what he's up to, but he's away at the moment. Humphrey back out onto the circuit then. 20 minutes to go. Not too much going on the circuit. We'll see how the strategy goes now that cars are on the dries. And let's ride on board with the fastest man that we've had on the circuit tonight and see how he gets on in these drying conditions. There's a nice clear dry line now for these drivers to work with. Puddles clearing up, skies of course clearing up as well, and we'll ride on board with Mr. Darbriga as he enters the pit lane very, very shortly. So catching up on the chat then, we've got Chaz doing some written commentary, which is always good as text service. And I must say, I'm a big fan of that comment. 50% of the commentators are 100% audible. It reminds me of that, what's that thing on Anchorman where he says 60% of the time works every time. So that's about where we are at the moment then. We have half the commentators, at least you can hear me. But
no,
it
you
does
can
seem...
hear me and all now if you want.
Hey, we have fucking life again. Welcome back, mate. Amazing. I was starting to get a bit concerned about having to go for the next 20 minutes on me ones, but you're back.
I said that to the missus once as well. But yeah, it's been quite the dramatic few minutes, hasn't it? Well, I've been gone. Flipping out. Massive, massive accident between Elof and the name I can't pronounce. Incredible, incredible action, though, and that now has really shaken up the front of the order.
Wow, yeah, you're right. I was really struggling to put my finger on who that was, but Ines Finchezewski's right into the side of Justin Elof, which is massive drama at the front of the order then, and that promotes the RDSA guys onto the podium, so they'll be very, very satisfied with that one, of course. Who's that? Jakob Klafek in the pit lane now, and yeah, what you've missed, Chaz, is all the grid committing onto that dry tyre. It's that point of the race now. Raz Harper's yet to come in. Finchezewski's yet to come in as well. Hamford, in fact, more so in the top 10 in the pro class, still committing to those wets, but I think within the next lap or two, we're going to see the entire field switching over to that dry compound.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to compound the fact that Discord wasn't just down to us, I don't know if any of you have ever used the wonderful website Down Detector. That is a fantastic place to go. If you're ever having issues with something, just look up there, and it's completely full of reports from people, and they had over 70,000 reports of Discord being down in less than 5 minutes.
Wow,
So,
I thought you were going to say Down Detector was down, but it wasn't.
Oh, that would be the day. That would be the day. That's like an AA van breaking down. That is. That's
that's
real divide by zero. But no, an interesting set of conditions right now though, because we've got that really dry line. There are still some drivers out there on wet tyres, which is what interests me quite a lot. Vinchezewski, one of them as well, actually running in 10th position overall. But we did see, didn't we? It was one of the, I'm going to pretend like I know, one of the MJK drivers. I think was it Luke Van Gortel was really struggling to be one of the first drivers onto the dry tyre. As we see now, Kalle Leskinen having a good old scrap with Jimmy Wyman here, to be fair. And Jimmy in the elite class, certainly not wanting to pick a fight with Kalle. And now he's off the circuit. Kalle just breezes on past the Mercedes as well. Flipping heck, he's flying in this number one car, but still in 6th place in class. Yeah,
well, he's got that front of the car back now that he's been into the pit lane. Oh, just a little excursion there off the side of the road. I was going to say he's got his front end back after he got himself into the pit lane, just fancied a little run over the gravel there. Clearly felt bad for overtaking Mr. Vyman, so he's given him that position right back, and he might just try and do it again on the run down at the turn 1.
He's showing off. Oh, he's showing off. That's what he's doing. He's saying, look, I like the front end of this car so much. I want to have a look at it hanging off again because I want to knock it on a curb. Still, chases down the Mercedes, as you say. Jimmy Vyman on the right-hand side there. I believe that Mercedes is a lap down, actually. It is the car of Wayne Basson, isn't it? The number 9 machine. Wayne not making himself very useful there, to say the least. And really, if there's anyone that's obligated to move out of the way, in that situation, it would have been Wayne. And, I mean, anybody, me included, would have expected him to have just lifted down the straight there slightly to let those guys go around. He's now made himself a bit of a nuisance to the cars behind them as well, which is Jakob Krafek and Bjorn Clausen. So he may get a slight slap on the wrists for that one, Wayne Basson. But the very confident Kalle Leskinen. Oh, hello. William Humphrey has lost the lead.
He has. He came tumbling down the time. I was spotting it, and I think, has he had an incident here? Let's quickly cut back before this battle continues. He's gone off the circuit on the dry tyre. Is that on the final corner? Yes, it is. He's committed way too much then.
As we say in the hood, he's been clarted. What was that about?
I did not expect that to come out of your mouth. Oh, no. It's such a slow impact. It's such a miserable impact.
Oh, it's an absolutely miserable impact. Oh, that's pathetic. If you're going to hit him, you need to do it properly.
At least,
Who was that? Laurens van der Wouter, funnily enough.
Wow. Well, he did just put something in the chat saying that he doesn't have a gear anymore. Stuck in 5th gear, had to retire. So maybe it wasn't him.
You have to drive off the circuit.
Yeah. Well, that's disaster for Mr. Humphreys. He's had Mr. Humphreys. It's Mr. Humphrey. I should know this by now. Yeah, it's a disaster for him. Because he's ran so well at the front of the field, best part of 6 seconds the entire race, and then one mistake on a drying track on a different compound, and that is the difference between, sadly, a winner and a loser at the moment. P2, still not so bad, but now he's got to contend with Mr. Kevin Daniels in behind, who's been reinstated back onto that podium, of course, after Lucchesi took that position off him. But with just 13 minutes to go, the tables have turned, and Lucchesi now leads the way, and you'd think a driver of his quality will not let that one slide before the end of this race.
And a commentator of your quality, Joe, will definitely have just commentators cursed him with that
there we
one.
go.
So we'll have to wait and see. Then again, you're not Ed May. Ed has the most powerful commentator's curse I've ever seen in the world. I would never want to go on a day out with Ed May, simply for the fact that he would just say, "Hi, Chaz," and you'd get hit by lightning. He's honestly got the most unbelievable curse. It's ridiculous. But Chris Jennings is currently leading the way in the pro class. He is only 0.6 of a second behind Luke King. I think Luke's just got ahead of him, actually, and he's just let him go up the road. He has got a gap of 13 seconds over Joshua Cowan. So we'll see how he gets on in these final moments. And again, like I said before, Alex Fretwell didn't have a very good qualifying in that McLaren, did he? But look at him and Josh. They are both up 16 places outright, and they have made this race work for them. They have just survived and kept this thing running and cracked on. Evan is the main man, you could say. He's gained 20 positions in this race, Evan Main. So he has got some definite main character vibes there as he goes up the order very drastically. This is Davy Daniels,
who was, of course, leading in the pro class for a lot of time.
Oh,
and this is how... Oh, dear.
Well, he's doing an impersonation of Davy Jones, not Davy Daniels there.
Yeah, that's very rough.
Watch it here.
Oh, it's just chronic understeer. Then it takes off. Then he's got no inputs. And he's off and round. Contact minimal. He might be all right. But that is both of our class leaders off at the same corner in somewhat similar fashion, of course. And, inheriting 2 new leaders. So Chris Jennings, all that work that he did to build up that gap is now paying off. Nearly 9 seconds out of Joshua Cohen. Alex Fretwell, he's got himself up onto the podium. He's gained 16 places, 8 in class off the start. So a brilliant effort by Alex to get himself up onto the podium. But yeah, drama for both of our race leaders after doing so well for so long. For it to unfold in that way is just, it's just horrible for them, isn't it, really?
I've never seen a car aquaplane like that on iRacing. Never seen it go that aggressive. Justin Eloff swoops around the outside of Chris Jennings now. Says, thank you very much, I'll take that. And he cracks on. But let's not forget, Chris Jennings is on the wet tyre here.
Yes.
And the drivers behind are not. So Jennings is really dropping lap time. He was actually 9 seconds slower than Joshua Cohen on that last lap. So, while it may be his teammate and he'll be happy for him to take the lead here, Chris is a sitting duck, but there's no water to sit on. He's just at the side of the park, just sitting on the gravel, getting a scratchy bum. So right now, he's just waiting to be picked off. And I think he knows that if he pits now, it's all game over. So he may as well stay out there and just try and hold on to whatever time he can. He's going to prove me wrong now coming to the pits, isn't he? Go on,
but
don't
he has
do it, Chris.
already... He has pitted. He must have had to pit early, perhaps, when it was way too wet to commit to that dry tyre. He has served a pretty normal... Yeah, pretty normal pit entry time. 56 seconds in the pit lane, 22 seconds in his pit box. So just about as much as anybody else.
Sorry, Joe. He pitted on the same lap as Alex Fretwell and only one lap ahead of Joshua Cohen as well. So he pitted around the same time as them and still took the wet tyre.
So that's probably a mistake, perhaps, in the cockpit for the race leader. Well, he will, and I will believe him, to be honest, because we've all been there. When you forget to tick the tyres or tick the fuel or tick the tick or tick whatever you need to tick in this bloody black box of it, then I'm not surprised he's made a mistake. However, still got a nice lead. This cluster ahead doesn't look ideal. Justin Elov is in the middle of it. Someone's off the road. And this is, that's 2 blue flags around them, actually, at the moment, because that's not... Oh, Vulcan off the road. Is that Quinton? Yes, Quinton off the road. He lets them through. He's now down into P9, so that's Ilov and Harper, who've just got through on the 101 Dutchman. Not the best for him at the moment, but still pretty good points for Mr. Verdonk, as Bjorn Claessens gets past Jakob Krafek and Jimmy Weimann under pressure here as well. Big time putting pressure on Ingus Vinciszewski's ahead, who's a driver we've seen very, very quick, but at the moment looks as though... it's because he's on the wets, Chaz. And that'll be why. Struggling for grip. The tyres will be screaming. Wow. And all his guys on the dry tyres will be fancying it around the outside at turn 10. A tricky place to make it stick. Going to go for the switchback on the exit. Perfectly done. And look at all the gravel. Wow, so much gravel on the exit there. Swoops around the outside. Great move, of course, on a bit of a stricken Acura. But nonetheless, lovely to see a racecraft like that in the offing. Jimmy Weimann then up to P11. And I think that's the best that he can hope for, with Thomas Pugh being nearly 10 seconds up the road.
Yeah, like you say, it may be quite an unfair fight with Ignace being on the wet tyre there, but that was still a really well-executed move that by the Porsche of Jimmy Weimann. We look here back from Quentin Verdonk at Raz Harper in the DDK Acura. Not sure that he's got the spec map applied to that car. The team might have to give him a slap on the wrists, but now Quentin gets away as they head down the back straight down this massive hill. There is so much gravel around the circuit. It's crazy. We had a bit of a chat about it when they first did the debris refresh thing before. I think it was Zolder last season, wasn't it? And it was raining and there was gravel everywhere. But even now, it's still very, very exaggerated. And I have to say, what is very exaggerated is my love for this Vulcan Motorsports Gold livery. It looks absolutely gorgeous. Really, really cool looking car on all their cars as well, actually. It suits all of them. Here's 2 more of them side by side. Nicely done. Bjorn Claessens and Ignace Vinciszewski. Right behind them now, Malcolm Coates trying to put pressure on. I think, no, actually, that is the 29 McLaren. I do apologise. That's Gilles Philippart just recuperating.
Yeah, a little bit of an option here in the pro class. The top 3, very close together actually. Raz Harper is just in front of Joshua Cohen, making it a little bit difficult for the pro class leader at the moment. There's Alex Fretwell just entering the picture in that red and chrome McLaren, so it's not over yet. Still just under 7 minutes to go here. That's a handful of laps left for these drivers to contend with. Of course, Chris on those wets is pretty much out of the question now, but it could go down to the wire between Cohen and Fretwell, depending on how long it takes Joshua to get past Raz, who moves over to the right-hand side. Is he going to make it easy? Oh, Alex just bumping over the gravel there. That was pretty treacherous for the McLaren in the background.
Yeah, that was extreme tyre cooling, that was, as Raz comes back over to the racing line now, but that's not going to favour him, though. He's in the ideal position, actually, to hold on ahead of Fretwell. And to be honest, Joshua Cohen. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong car there. Josh... Oh, Raz, what are you doing? Well, I don't know what he was doing, but Luke King is not going to be sending him a Christmas card, that is for sure. Raz looked down the inside, locked it up, and there you go. Joshua Cohen gains a position. That's his 19th place gained in this race. Raz, I don't think, was given much of an option to look down the inside of the Porsche, no. And then he just locks it up and just goes straight.
Oh, Yeah, difficult one. Not really where you want to find a car coming at a much higher
broken.
speed.
It looks like he's right hand down, very right hand down. Or is it? What?
No, it did look broken on that left hand side.
That front left wheel is like 45 degrees right for me. Is it the same for you?
Yes. Oh, 45 degrees left. Yes. Pointing to the outside. Anyway, it looks okay.
Oh,
but
mine's pointing to the inside.
Oh, mine's pointing to the outside.
That's really weird. I'm going to look. Actually, yeah, I'm looking on the broadcast now because I've got it up on my left-hand screen. It's like it's broken a toe link and it's just completely hanging off.
It does look a little bit wobbly.
I think he's just realised as well now. He's just backed out of it. So that means now Joshua Cohen finds himself leading in the Pro class. Hats off.
Yeah, very good for him. And he's made that gap up on Fretwell nicely. It was just over a second as we crossed over the line on the last lap. Now it's 3.5. So sitting pretty now. 4.5 minutes to go. The lap time's ticking down. Bjorn Klassen, he's had an incident right at the end of this session. All the while, Luke Lucchese getting on with it. 3 seconds to William Humphrey. It's going to be tight, but I think he's going to be okay in the end. No one really doing battle at the moment, and still, you got to feel so bad for those guys who are stuck out there on those wet tyres. We'll drop that data now because you don't need it, but to see 5 or 6 drivers still on that compound, oh God, it must be feeling awful for them. They'll just be praying for the checkered flag to drop.
It'll be like driving a 500 horsepower forklift, that'll be absolutely horrible to drive. Victor Van Zeist and David Hutchison are the 2 closest drivers on the circuit at the moment. Sounds like the start of a bad joke, doesn't it? A Dutchman and a Scotsman in a Porsche and a McLaren. But the 2 of them are right close to each other, or reek close as you'd say up north. 10th and 11th in the Pro class, but they are the only drivers really. Although no, actually there's quite an exciting battle forming in the Elite class, but I don't think it's going to last long because it's Ignace Vinciszewski, yep, you've picked it. Jakub Krafek right behind him, but this is again dry tyre versus wet tyre. Another gorgeous looking race car as well, Jakub Krafek. He's actually got the Most Autodrome branding on the car, which is interesting. Now, Autodrome Most is an amazing circuit in Czechia. The Goodyear FIA European Truck Racing Championship goes there, and they're actually testing there next week. And it is a hell of a circuit, and I would love to see it come to iRacing one day. It's so meticulous and difficult as these guys now just get closer and closer together.
I think that was Bruno Silva, perhaps, who just reset to the pit lane. He was spun on the outside of the circuit there, got himself out the way, and back to the pits. So that's his night over. You're really going to fancy Jakob here to get the power down and try and get past him, but Ignace doing well to hang on. I spoke too soon because he's gone at the inside. The Porsche gets that move done. Nothing that the Acura can do in response to that, sadly. He just doesn't have the grip, doesn't have the temperature to do anything. Well, he does have the temperature, just far too much of it, actually. As we'll cross over for what will probably be the maybe the penultimate lap, maybe 3 laps to go. We'll soon see. Let's ride on board with Luke Lucchese. Here he comes then, around the final corner, just off the back of those drivers. So P13 in class. He's about to lap them all. And Luke will probably be quite pleased with himself. He'll be very pleased with himself after, as we said, Chaz, an underwhelming qualifying session. P7 at the start, and he's held his own, counted on a few mistakes from others. And he finds himself right at the front of the field. 2 minutes to go, and he's got a nice 2.5 second margin, which is reducing, actually, I must say. William Humphrey is putting some good lap times in at the moment. Maybe if William had 3 or 4 more laps on top of what we have left, he might stand a chance, but something tells me with the time we have remaining, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah, the only major thing that will change this now will be lap traffic, and funnily enough, Luke Lucchese is just catching up to Vinciszewski in the Acura. Hopefully he'll do the right thing here and move over for our race leader. He absolutely is doing so. Good sportsmanship there. It can be difficult when you are a front runner like Ignace is to see other front runners that you should be battling against and have to let them go. He won't enjoy doing that, but at least he's a good sport and he's managed to move out of the way nice and cleanly. He's got the Finn right behind him of Kalle Leskinen. That is for overall position, but they're on 2 different classes. We will get 1 more lap after this one, though. I think Luke will cross the line with maybe 10 or 8 seconds left to go if he's on the same pace as last time. And like you say, William Humphrey only taking 1/10 of a second out of him last time. It's Justin Eloff that's the driver on the mission at the moment. He did a purple lap last time around, 1:44.5. He was 1.1 seconds quicker than our current race leader who we have on screen right now. So he's really on the move, but he's not in striking distance of anybody. as we see Kalle Leskinen hoping to get past the Lithuanian Vinciszewski. And with the different tyre compounds they're on, it shouldn't be a big contest, although he doesn't want to go on the wet part of the circuit there, does he? Where has William Humphrey gone, by the way? Has he gone past these guys? Yeah, he has gone. I thought he was behind them for a minute there. I absolutely cacked it. I thought he'd gone, but no, he's there.
Still all good. And yeah, it's not too bad for Vinciszewski's now then. I mean, P13 is not what he'll want, not where he will want to be as Leskinen looks up the inside. Yeah, I was going to say, but yeah, thankfully for him, he's got Malcolm Coates behind. Then it's Tiek Plurg who's next. And look at that. Leskinen backed out of that one. Let him go through. I'm not quite sure if they made contact there.
Sorry, Joe. I think he was on so much of the wet part of the circuit on the inside. He didn't want to risk anything there, did Kalle? He was forced to the inside. He got on a load of the moisture. And he didn't want to go anywhere near it. I'm really confused as why Ignas is defending this so hard. He knows he's on the wet tyre against the driver on the dries. And I too, like, yeah, I too would be flashing my lights. They're in different classes anyway. They're not fighting each other for the same sort of set of points. I don't get why he's defending that so hard. If anything, he's going to cause an accident for the pair of them here by just overly defending this position. That's confusing.
I was going to say, yeah, he's got such a margin down to Tiek Plurg in P14 that it wouldn't really matter if he left the Porsche go. I'm not sure if this is... Yeah, I'm not quite sure if this is some beef, paddock beef. I don't think there is any yet in the season, but yeah, it does seem a little bit aggressive for where we are on this race. But having said that, it's not the worst for this man as he comes around the penultimate corner. William Humphrey, look at that, got within 1.5 seconds as they head around the final corner. But for the first time, I've never had the pleasure of Luke winning the race. And a little Easter egg for some of us. Chaz, you may not be aware, but I'm sure Tristan will enjoy this one. So as he comes over the line, Luke Lucky Cheesy wins the race here at Portimão for ESR GT3 Season 8. And I had to say it, I should have said it in a more northern accent, but we used to have our friend right at the start of things who didn't quite have Lucchese down.
I love that. Luke Lucchese, great victory. It must be his lucky charm. I come back in the box and he wins the race. William Humphrey, though, you have to say, despite that mistake and all the challenges that he's had up against him in this race, second position will not go down too badly with him. He'll be a bit gutted not to have won the race, as Kevin Daniels finishes in third position in the Acura. Great result for him. And Joshua Cohen is going to take the victory in the Pro class. Only a few more corners left to go, but he's got a good 23 seconds and then half a minute over Chris Jennings. Like I said at the top of the broadcast, Joe, he and Alex, both drivers that can just make it work in the race. They can survive, they can pick their battles, keep it tidy, and score the points that all matter towards their championship.
That's exactly what they've done then. So Joshua will come round the final corner now for the Y-Axis Sim Sports, and he will take maximum points, what is double points, of course, from our usual sprint format, and he will take the checkered flag first in our Pro division. So big congrats to the Axis Sim Sports drivers, particularly over to Joshua. And sadly, it wasn't meant to be for Chris Jennings in the end, but he won't mind that it's a 1-2 for his team, and he won't mind that he's done very well to stay out on that compound. I'm not sure if it's the same set or if it's a new set that he switched over to when he went into the pit lane, but to be stuck on that compound and crossing the line in P2 is still a valiant effort so far, ahead of this man, Mr. Fretwell, who also gets his foot down, and he's run out of fuel. So let's see, where is P4? It's over, because they were under lapped traffic. So all Alex has to do is dribble it to the line. Fingers crossed he can actually do it. It looks as though he has got fuel, but he's fuel saving to the max.
And some would tell you this is the maximum pace of the McLaren. Any of them that would drove it flat out would say that's all it's got in it. But I don't think he expected it to go that extra lap, because let's not forget, Luke Lucchese only crossed the line with about 10 seconds left to go, which took them then to another near 2 minutes worth of driving. So I don't think Alex expected it to go that many laps, but he got lucky at the end there, Joe, and managed to complete the podium. But a great and busy race. Shame about the Discord technical difficulties, but we won't lament on that too much. It was a good race all the same.
It was, and I'm glad that we got you back in the end. A 10-minute blip can't be helped, but yeah, not quite sure what went wrong. So we'll have to check that one out after this and see if we can work through it. So then, we've got a few other things to work through, don't we, Charles? We've got the finishing positions of all of our drivers to run through, so we'll bring that to you now. Starting first, of course, with the Elite Division, as always. So, in quite a dramatic end, Luke Lucky Cheesy again there. Luke Lucchese does win the race for RDSA Esports. He was so close to winning the opening race this time last week, finishing P2 in the end. This time, though, he's got it done in what was even trickier circumstances than last week, from 7th up to 1st, capitalising on the mistake from the inevitable P2 finisher of William Humphrey, who's had a great start to his championship, of course. Took that deduction to get out of the Mercedes into the Porsche, and it's already starting to pay dividends for the Vulcan Fasteners Zastec Racing driver. Kevin Daniels will round out the podium. Great display from the Belgian in that Acura for the DDK Racing team, of course. You can see how common some of those team names are up and down the grid. The next two, the RDSA roundup of Tristan Denobdiger and Justin Iloff, will round out the top 5 ahead of Sam Derbyshire and Quinton Verdonk. DDK Vulcan there inside the top 7. We have another RDSA driver, Luke King, another DDK driver, Raz Harper inside the top 9, and then Jimmy Vyman rounding out the top 10. It was Thomas Pugh ahead of Jakob Krafek now, who finished 1 lap down off our race leaders. And then a hat-trick of Vulcan drivers. Ignas Vinchezevski's drama at the start, a man who we know definitely has the pace to be toward the front of the field, stuck out on those wet tyres, didn't do him any favours toward the end of the race. He finishes in a lonely but still decent P13 ahead of Tjek Plug, who had drama right at the start in the first sector, couldn't quite recover for the rest of the session. He finishes down in P14. Bjorn Klassen will finish in P15 and will be the last of our scorers in this round, I believe, as Miles Owens finishing 11 laps down, Dominic Holver-Stanley finishing 12 laps down in P17, and then Luke Van Gortel, Alexander Bird and Kostek Sloviej finishing inside the top 20, and I believe that is everybody. Yes, it is. That's your Elite Class roundup then. 20 drivers, an opportunity for everybody to score points, but sadly only 15 of them will do so.
Yeah, very, very close, and at the end of the day, in such a competitive series, you have to be in it to win it with those point scores, and it is never easy to get it across the line, especially in these conditions. And I mean, look at this here in the pro class. Joshua Cohen wins this class by half a minute from Chris Jennings, and then Alex Fretwell nearly a minute off the lead. God, it's like F1 in the 90s. Kalle Leskinen then a lap down, and everybody else more than that. Davy Daniels in 4th place ahead of Evan Main. Lorenzo Gorgetto in 7th position ahead of Victor Van Zeist. David Hutchison and Danny Phillips complete the top 10. Malcolm Coates, Stephen Codman, Stephen Hobbs and Wayne Basson are then representing the Acuras and Mercedes altogether just outside the top 10, ahead of Gilles Philipparts and Lawrence de Dapper, who was 2 laps down. And then the drivers, I believe, that didn't finish the race were Bruno Silva, Alexander Fuchs, Jeffrey Jarman, not Jeffrey Jarman, Young Gonzalez, Marcel Henschel and Laurens van der Wouter. And that will round, I think, out the pro class. I don't think there was many more past that. There were Biagio Catrali, best name in the world, Joshua Ness, and then Ashley Brooks after that big accident we saw earlier on in the race with the aforementioned Bruno Silva. Quite a brutal race over in the pro class, actually, Joe. I know we had quite a few retirements from the elite class, but pro really, really got blown apart, didn't it?
It really did, yeah, and we caught up with as much as we could. As we say, a lot of drama for some of those guys toward the back of the order, but congratulations to our front runners, of which we'll have a few to speak to in just a moment. So we'll swap over. We've got a handful of drivers to run through. We'll definitely get at least 3 of them in, and we'll see if we can squeeze a couple more in toward the end, so bear with us, and we'll be bringing you some post-race interviews in just a moment. Okie dokie then, Chaz. So, I'll leave it up to you who you wish to bring in first. Perhaps Luke Lucchese, our race winner.
Yes.
Then we can maybe speak to Alex Fretwell in the Pro Division, and we'll work our way from there.
Absolutely. Luke Lucchese. Luke, it's almost like, I'm taking full credit here that I am a lucky charm for you in these races, but that was not easy at all, was it, mate? You never have it easy in these things, but you had to really concentrate on the conditions there. Talk us through it.
Well, when I tested earlier for the race, I was using wetter conditions, and the setup actually felt pretty good. And then when we started quali, I had zero grip. Hence me being down in P6, and even the first part of the race, like, it was very bad. But as the track started drying like properly, I don't think my tires heated up as much as everybody else, because then I started actually getting some pace out of the car. And then I think I just got lucky at the end there. It's like the seas parted ahead of me with Humphrey making the mistake, and then from there I could just manage the gap.
I was going to say it certainly was a bit of, there's always luck on side with races like this because of how brutal they are on everybody in the field. But at the end of the day, you have to keep the car on the island yourself, and this isn't an island that's easy to keep it on, is it, at Portimão? And like I was saying before, even if you flattened this place, it would still be difficult.
Yeah, no, it's not the easiest of tracks, especially in the wet. And then you've got guys going off, and it's just that, foreign debris flag on my screen literally the whole race, from all the pebbles and stones on the circuit. So you're trying your best to avoid, and then also try and keep the tires cool at the same time, because the tires were roasting, and the grip drop off was just crazy. So yeah, I mean, at that point, I almost passed Tristan coming out the pits, and then overcooked it into turn 1. But gave me the information that I needed on how I needed to drive, where I needed to be careful, just to be able to maintain.
And that's it. It's about maintenance in these races and damage limitation a lot of the time, just trying to stick to your survival instincts, and you obviously did that very well. It's great to see you get that win here tonight. It was a pleasure to be back in the box for this one-off to come and see it. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout-out to before we let you go and enjoy the moment?
Just a shout out to my teammates. Always nice having them in the Discord, and then obviously my folks who never miss a stream. So I think my dad isn't watching this one live, so I'll let it be a surprise for him. After the disappointment of quali, but and then obviously the commentators, the organizers. James for organizing the awesome league. Really one of the best leagues I've ever raced in. So yeah, and then obviously everyone who watches.
Absolutely, nicely said, Luke.
Yeah, congratulations as well from me before you go. Good stuff.
Thanks, Joe. Keep well.
You too, man.
Well, there we go, Luke Lucchese. What a bloke. What a bloke. It's great to see him get another win again, actually. It's been a while since I've seen him win.
It is. You know what, Chaz? I've been doing this now, as I said to you earlier, nearly a year. I must have watched Luke compete in... At least he was in the initial TCR division. I think he was in the GT4s as well for that first season. I've never seen him win a race. So, obviously, I was not with you in A-Split last season, but... I've watched him compete in the booth quite a number of times, I'd say, and this is the first time that he's taken the race victory. So good for him. It was bound to come, and now it has. And he was so unlucky last week. So it's good that he's managed to convert that one. Sadly, though, at the expense of Mr. William Humphrey, who we're about to have a little word with. So we'll go ahead and bring him into the booth. William, welcome in. First of all, hello. I mean, we've got to talk about the incident, which is a shame, but I did want to say, you've switched over to the Porsche. Talk us through how that felt. Qualifying went okay. The start of the race, the first Porsche, the race was brilliant. So it must feel like it was the right decision to get out of the Mercedes and get yourself into that Porsche.
Porsche feels great. So much better. Was not expecting to be right at the top, especially not in quali. Didn't have a lot of confidence coming into quali. But when it happened, I was really pleased, a little bit nervous. Then tried to keep on the island, but it didn't quite happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, was that something to do them just dry conditions on a damp surface that just caught you out? We saw it on the stream, of course, so we know sadly how that happened. You got a little bit of contact as well when you were trying to recover the car. Is that just a simple mistake, or did you really feel it coming before it happened?
No, it was a really, really stupid mistake. I went wide, went into a half spin, and with the half spin I would have been ahead of Lucchese, ahead of people like that, but with that hit from behind I fully spun around and couldn't keep the lead. But still happy with the race. I mean, I still show my speed, still showing that I could be up there with the likes of Lucchese and Denobriga, but it's still a bit annoying.
Yeah, we were saying just earlier on how, of course, we've seen your dominance in the GT4s, but perhaps some of these guys at the top of A-Split might not be aware of the name. We don't know what they watch. Of course, the RDSA guys have been here for a long time, and a few of the guys at the front, and you've come along, and last week you got not a surprise victory, but I think maybe even yourself wouldn't have expected to take that win so early on in the season. Of course, you've taken that championship hit to switch cars, but you seem very, very strong, very confident, and now that you're in, let's say, more of a favourable machine, I'm sure we'll see you doing this throughout the championship. So how's the confidence coming in? Of course, you're so used to GT4s, you're competing in the European GT Championship as well in the GT4, so got enough time to get some laps in the GT3 and try and compete this season?
I like the GT3s more just because they feel nicer and they're a little bit faster, suits my driving style a little more. But I haven't had a lot of experience with the Porsche GT3, so wrapping my head around that last couple of days has been I wouldn't say difficult, but interesting to say the least. Confidence is pretty high going into the next few rounds. Hoping to take the battle to the Casey and maybe not drop it next time round.
Yeah, hopefully so, mate. Hopefully so. Back to dry weather next time, so back to a little bit of normality. So before we let you go, mate, anyone you'd like to give a shout out to, you can go ahead and do that now, and then we'll move on to our next driver.
All the admins in ESR, it can't be said enough. You guys put on a great show here, a great league, and I've really, really enjoyed myself over the last few seasons I've been here. You, Derek, Chaz, James, Rob Mackay, all the lot, everyone. Thank you so much.
Our absolute pleasure, William. Great to speak to you, mate. Unfortunate with the spin, but still solid points for the championship, and as you know, points mean prizes. So hopefully more of the same next time. Cheers.
Thank you so much.
William Humphrey, fantastic driver. I've seen him drive past me many a time in a GT4 car, and it does not bother me one little bit.
No, I'm sure not. I'm sure it doesn't.
Oh no, I'm not bitter about it one bit. So we move on to our next interview though, and I'm looking forward to once again speaking to Alex Fretwell, a driver that just yesterday was driving a very different car to this. Actually, he was driving the Formula Mazda in a series that I run, racing for a pretend Stewart Formula One team at Donington Park. Alex, a bit different this here tonight in these conditions. This McLaren, it still may feel like it's got its wheels on backwards like the Formula Mazda, but how was that overall for you?
Yeah, I was driving that Stewart towards the car park at East Midlands Airport at one point last night.
He's not lying.
Yeah, obviously, sort of knew again with coming in with McLaren this year that these wet races would be sort of damage limitation. So yeah, it was just keeping it on the track really for the first half of the race. I had about 2 laps left of fuel before I pitted. Just started feeling like it could potentially work on the slicks, and then it was just getting better all the time. I didn't know at the time, but apparently I was in the class lead at one point. Just caught a bit of water out the back of the circuit, ran a little bit wide, kept it on the track, but just lost some momentum. And Josh came through, and then despite going what I thought was reasonably high on the fuel margin, it was a little shy. Fortunately though, most of the others I think were a lap down, so I just lost the place to Chris Jennings in the end.
Yeah, we were saying as you came across the line that because it was so close to going that extra lap, I think Luke Lucchese crossed the line with just over 10 seconds left on the clock. So that then triggered almost 2 more minutes worth of driving for some of you guys a bit further back from him, so to speak. So you weren't quite at the spearhead of the pack. So that obviously it's a quite a big knock-on effect for you guys in the pro class, isn't it? When you have to think about the distance between the overall leaders and you guys and how that may affect your race and your strategy, because it can really throw the cat amongst the pigeons, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And like say, if it was only 10 seconds, I mean that can be sort of thrown either way by. I'm not sure what pace they were doing in the end, but half a second here per lap will soon change that. So small margins, but obviously can't really be too disappointed with third. I think it's quite a bit better than I managed last week, so just about starting to get back into the swing of these GT3s, having spent most of my time, like you say, in that strange little Mazda.
It is strange, that's the best way to describe it.
And then obviously Mugello next time, which went pretty well last season in the second race that we had pretty much in the dry. So dry this time as well, and I'm quite looking forward to how this McLaren goes around there.
You and me both, mate. You and me both. Is there anyone
There's a few
you'd
more
like
this season though, so I don't get the advantage.
Well, we were saying that. Now you're not the only one flying the flag, and I was going to say actually that Josh, your teammate, being in the... sorry, no, he's not your teammate. He's Chris Jennings' teammate. Sorry, I got the team names mixed up there. But having other McLarens on the grid with you obviously means that there's a direct comparison now between the machines, so it makes it all the more exciting to watch. But still, it's great to...
I've not got as many excuses now.
Well, I mean, you said it in the way I was hinting at. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before you go, Alex?
I guess just you guys. I will be watching it back. I've not done what I do with the Mazdas, watching it during the race, but I'll watch it back later. And yeah, thanks for providing the facility for me to do that.
Yeah, good stuff, Alex. Congratulations, and yeah, good stuff. See you next week.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right then, good stuff. So always good to hear from Alex. You don't hear from him too often, actually, but a good result in the end for the RLH driver then. So we'll bring in one more race winner. Of course, we have waiting in the commentary booth Mr. Joshua Cohen. So we'll go ahead and bring in Josh. The first time I think we've spoken to him. So Joshua, are you with us, mate? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Good stuff, Joshua. Welcome in, mate. Well, first of all, big congratulations, of course. A very, very tricky place to go and race as it is, never mind in wet conditions. So talk us through your preparation, talk us through how you were feeling coming into this session, and then, of course, how it felt to take that race victory, of course, in what was arguably probably one of the trickiest sessions that we'll have all season.
Well, my preparation is that I didn't have any preparation. I just haven't had time to sort of sit down, so I sort of came into this thinking, all right, you know, I'm not going to have the pace of the top people. Let's just keep it on the track. Let's try and survive. And somehow I did. And somehow that got me a hell of a lot higher up than I thought I would be.
Yeah, you gained so many places. I'm not sure if this is totally accurate, but SDK is telling me 19 places from qualifying all the way up to that race victory. So it really was a dominant drive. And I'm curious, you obviously have a lot of the Axis Sim Sports team are now split across a few more teams than they were in the past. So are you guys communicating with each other, you know, talking strategy and helping each other out on the circuit? How much does it help having, you know, in this split, you've got the two teams, of course. How does it help having potentially even 6 drivers on the track at once, just helping each other out with what's going on around the circuit?
Yeah, it's so much help. I mean, I'm not very experienced in these kind of conditions, at least not on iRacing. So I sort of, when it comes to the crossover, I haven't got a clue. So to have these people who are a hell of a lot more experienced than me, sort of telling me, you know, feeding me information, what's it like, you know, when should we typically be switching to the dries? It's a massive help, because it was probably the moment that made the race, switching to the dries at the right time. I think we were quite fortunate that it sort of came about the lap that I was planning on pitting for fuel anyway. But yeah, it was a great help. I probably wouldn't have won that if I didn't have their feedback.
Yeah, that's always the tricky thing. You know, you don't want to pit for fuel and then have to come in for tyres later and whatnot. So it's always that balance, isn't it? Trying to get it on that preferred pit window and then getting the tyres at the same time. We saw a few guys going in a little bit too early. Some guys having to stay out on the wets the entire session. So it looks as though yourself and the team have called that one spot on. So with that then, Josh, starting the season pretty strong, you know, how does that change your expectation at all for the next 8 weeks worth of racing, or are you just going to go play by week and see where you end up?
Maybe. I mean, sort of last week wasn't brilliant. I sort of didn't have the best of luck, but at the same time, sort of the pace wasn't there. So I think, you know, maybe I'm not expecting to be fighting for the championship, but you never say no. Never say never. I'm just going to play it race by race, see what happens, see where I stand next week.
Good stuff, mate. Well, I'll give you an opportunity to give anybody a shout out if you would like to, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up for the evening.
Yeah. Shout out to everyone in my team, man. I wouldn't have won that without you guys.
Very good stuff, mate. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us, and maybe you'll get a little bit more time for preparation next week, and we'll see you then. See how you get on. Good stuff, mate. Nice to speak to you. Right. Oh, then. So that is us concluded with our post-race interviews. So thank you to everyone who joined us, of course. And Chaz, before we end, if you're just going to give us a few words, summarise that one for us. It was pretty hectic at the start, and we saw both leaders change position toward the end of the race. Heartbreaks and big moments for a lot of these drivers. And like I said, I think they'll be pleased to know that this session, probably one of the most challenging on the calendar, is all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was certain parts of that race where a lot of the drivers were hoping that their tyres would get up to the same temperature as our graphics cards, to be honest, but it was still a very entertaining race. It had a bit of everything. There was a nice chill period in the middle where everybody got into a rhythm and figured out the conditions and was waiting ready for the crossover later on. We had an incident at the start that blew a lot of the field apart, and then of course we had some great battles towards the end, people on different strategies, different tyres and different fuel amounts, even with, Alex Fretwell barely making it to the line. It was another typically ESR race that had quite a lot of different elements to it. It was great fun to be back, and I appreciate you having me in the booth again, mate. It's been good to finally work with you.
Yeah, likewise, mate. I'm glad we made it happen. We've been talking about it for a little while, and we finally got it done. It's a shame Discord had to go and get in the way of it being a flawless evening, but you can't always avoid that one. So good stuff. I appreciate that. And we look ahead then as we wrap up for the session for the night. We look ahead to next week, where the drivers head to Mugello, back to dry conditions, still in Italy, for what is another pretty tricky undulating circuit. Back to the 30-minute sprint race format, of course, so you can catch myself alongside Dara Thacker once again for that one at Thursday at 8 p.m. And of course, as we always cover, we now have 4 events on, well actually 5 events during the week, of course. We have the GT3 sessions here on a Thursday evening, Split A and Split B on at the same time, all on the Evolution Sim Racing YouTube channel. And then of course Mr. Bostock and Dara Thacker join together in the commentary box every other Sunday to host the European GT Championships on Sunday evening. That gets underway a little bit earlier, race start normally 8 p.m, not just session start, so join those guys for qualifying probably around 7:30. And then the Danny Lee Porsche Cup getting underway very shortly on alternate Sundays, away from the European GT Championship. You can find that broadcast over on Apex Racing TV, so keep an eye out in the Discord for all the information on the Danny Lee Porsche Cup, which promises to be a pretty interesting championship, of course. Very tricky cars to drive, those Porsche Cups, so it'll be good to watch on and see how those guys get on. And then for anybody who fancies getting involved with us here at Evolution Sim Racing, we have a free to join practice league taking place every Tuesday evening and every Saturday at 4 p.m, alternating between the GT3 circuits, the GT circuits and the Porsche Cup circuits, so that everybody has their fair share of practice. That's Saturday afternoons and Tuesday evenings. Nearly a day of action every single day of the week. We're getting close to it. Maybe we'll be there eventually. Anyone who wishes to join can go ahead and scan the QR code on screen now, or use that link that you see, discord.gg/ESR. You get yourself in the server. We actually recently crossed over into 1,000 members, which is a great achievement for us. I think we're about 1,030 now or something, so we're growing by the day. And we look forward to getting more and more drivers on the grid. So thanks to Chaz, of course, for joining me. It's been a pleasure to work alongside him this evening in the booth, and I appreciate everyone for hanging around and watching. Chat was busy tonight, and I'm glad that we all got through that one in the end. So thanks for watching, and myself and Dara will be back this time next week, 8 p.m, for round 3 at Mugello. Good night, everyone.